In this video, I'm going to talk about why technique is more important than tools. I'm Daniel Norton, photographer here in New York. I make videos like this about technique, about philosophy, about business of photography. If that interests you, go ahead and subscribe, and let's get to it. So what I'm talking about here is the idea that you've heard the story a million different ways, right? A good photographer can make a picture with anything, or, it's not the lens, it's the photographer. And this is what I'm talking about here, and it is true on some level. Now, I will also say equipment does matter, and we talk about that a bunch in videos that I do about why you buy certain pieces of equipment. But that being said, I think what ends up happening sometimes is we get so fixated on what a tool is supposed to give us that we feel like that tool is the thing. And really, every tool that we have as a photographer is just a way to modify light, if it's lighting, right? Or a way to capture light if it's a camera or it's a lens. So understanding light is so much more important than that, right? If you know that, for instance, if light's coming from this direction and I have shadow over here, and I know that if I put something here that's reflective in, it will fill the shadow. It doesn't matter if I use a piece of foam board, if I use the wall that just happens to be there, if I use, for an example, Seth would use a pizza box, or if I use an actual expensive reflector or a cheap reflector or another light even, to do the same thing, which would be doing something slightly different. But this is more important than the actual tool that we use, right? Because once you understand what needs to be done, then you can choose the right tool. And there's reasons to have some things over others. A pizza box is not going to be, exactly neutral in color tone, right? Cheap reflectors tend to, especially silver ones, tend to have weird color cast to them. So there's reasons to use better stuff. But at the same time, if you spend your time looking at a shadow and then looking at 17 pieces of equipment and trying to figure out what to do, you're not getting anything done, right? What you really need to do is understand why you use each piece of equipment. Why do we use a softbox? Or why do we use an umbrella? Or why do we use a beauty dish? What's the point of it? Once you understand that, you will become a stronger, more versatile photographer. And when you do have the, quote, right piece of equipment, you'll be even better, because you'll really understand why you're using it. Now, it kind of reminds me, I don't know, this is from a long time ago. I think it was a show called Food Network Star. Anyways, it was about the Food Network, which I'm pretty sure still exists. And there was, looking for hosts or whatever. And one of the very first challenges in it, they put all these people, and they're, most of them aren't trained chefs or whatever, and they put like a bunch of food in front of them. They're like, all right, we want you to julienne this one and chop this one and grate this one, or whatever the different techniques are. And they put, this big block of all these different tools in front of them. And obviously they cut the thing together, it looked this way, but people were trying to figure it out. They were using each different knife for different things, trying to figure stuff out. And most people either didn't finish because they didn't have time, or didn't get a lot of the technique right. And then in the end, the judge came forward and he just took the most simple chef knife and did each technique with that knife. And it was totally fine. Yeah, there probably would have been a tool that might have done it a little bit better, but that basic knife did everything, Your basic light can do everything. When people say things like light is light, that's what they mean. That's what they should mean if they understand it. Because honestly, light isn't light when it comes down to quality and consistency, and that's, again, a whole other thing. But the idea is that once you have light and you kind of understand how light works, you should be able to create, whether it be the light coming through your window, whether it be a flash, whether it be the constant light, whether it be the light on your phone. Once you understand what light does, you can actually start to manipulate it and shape it and bend it to your will, essentially, to create the vision that you have. And that is so much more important than what you're using. When it comes to the point where the actual tool makes a difference, you should already be past the point that technique is even a thought. It's already so ingrained in you. This is why when you look at people, or people talk about how, like, oh, well, this is just as good, this piece of, let's say low-end equipment or whatever, they're just not experienced. They don't know why they need the better piece. And that's okay. They need to keep growing, and eventually they will. You will hit a point where you will see why you need a certain tool, and at that point is when you really, you know, people often say, "What should I buy?" I have these 5 things to buy, and my answer to them always is, "What are you trying to do?" Because to just randomly buy a piece of equipment, a softbox, let's say, okay, what does that do for you? You're like, yeah, you could give me a softbox or an experienced person a softbox and they can do a bunch of stuff with it, but why are you buying it? Like, what is it that you think it's going to bring to the table? And once you understand that, you can step back and say, okay, well, this is what it does for me. This is why I want to do it, and this is why I need it. So it's kind of the step you need to have first. And which is kind of weird because you kind of need to have stuff to learn, right? And I did make another video, which I will link, I guess, about starting equipment if you wanted like a good basic lighting kit to start with, for instance. You can look at that because it's true. It's kind of a catch-22, right? It's like, well, I don't want to get any equipment. I don't need equipment until I know a technique, but I don't know a technique until I have equipment. So it is true you're going to buy stuff, which is the other reason why you should be somewhat fearless. Like, I get that everything costs money, but at the same time, if you don't know, just get something, right? Whatever that thing is that you have, you will work it to death until you know what it can't do, and then you're going to really understand what you need. So oftentimes what I recommend is, like a small flash, like a speed light or whatever, to new people, because that is the most basic thing. And really the kind of thing that you can make great stuff with, but it's really not the primary tool. Like, it's really not what you want to be using for most photo stuff, because, lack of power, the lack of versatility, the blah, 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 pound for pound, money for money. It's not the most inexpensive thing you can buy either. But it's super versatile and super great, and you can keep it with you, and it allows you to use lighting, because using light and controlling light is much better than just not. As I've discussed many times, you want to be able to take control of your situation, right? And that's where your technique comes in. And even then, right, if I'm somewhere and I've been shooting and I understand light and I always work in the studio, and then I find myself in a place where I don't have any lighting or whatever, and I just need to make a portrait of somebody, I already understand light. I understand why I'm using a softbox. I understand why I use hard light. I understand how hair lights work. I can then take my subject and put them into the available light in a way that is more successful, because I understand light. I understand the technique. And the same thing is true as if you started off shooting natural light. If you're just going out there and shooting and not understanding it, take a second to really think about why you're doing the things you're doing and what they're bringing to the page. And once you can understand those techniques and that kind of the science behind it, if you will be in a much better place to buy the things that will make you go even further, which would be your tools. What do you guys think? Do you feel like you become better photographers when you buy more equipment that gives you more versatility? Or do you think narrowing down your choices makes you stronger? And do you have a anecdote or whatever that's the case? I mean, a lot of people talk about, if you've been to photo school, almost every photo school, they do this. They make you shoot with one lens. They do that thing when you first start. That really helps, you to learn to work with what you got, which then really lets you see the limitations of it. So did you guys do that? Do they still do that in photo school? Who knows? I feel like, because I keep thinking of new things, so the video keeps getting longer. This kind of ties also into the idea of like where I've talked a bit about using like Photoshop and stuff. If you have unlimited choices in front of you, it actually becomes hard to actually know what to do. So I think the idea of like learning certain techniques first before you start adding all these extra tools in. So let's say your tools, you can even look at it in post-production, like your tool, your Photoshop, right, is your tool, but not Photoshop itself as a tool, all the tools inside of Photoshop. If you were to learn why things work a certain way, you'll use those tools more effectively, because you won't just be like doing things, you'll be doing things that have purpose and have reason. And that, I think, will make you better at retouching, better at everything. The more you understand, the more you are better at the delivery. So let me know, guys. If you have not already, please subscribe. I'm going to be doing more tech videos. I said I will do some more which is funny, ties into this, because I think that that they're important. But don't worry, I won't stop doing these, and I'll see you next time.